Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories. Are neighbors common, or is it not that simple? In today's first installment, we'll try to figure it out. Enjoy the show! Since childhood, I have always been fascinated by rocket engines. Every time a space shuttle launch or any other rocket launch was announced, I was glued to the screen. The enormous power of a controlled explosion inevitably drew me to this field. I had already completed my bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from Georgia Tech and was now pursuing my master's degree. I wanted to become a rocket scientist. Born into a middle-class family, my parents helped me with my tuition fees as best they could, and I covered the rest of my needs with student loans. I had long been considered a botanist, and I was proud of this title because I was working hard on my life's goal. I had not yet started meeting girls at university. Sure, I was a frat guy, but not the type of jock that girls gravitated towards. Last week, I noticed that an attractive girl was watching me in the campus cafeteria where I always ate lunch. To save time on studying, I used to see her with some guy, but for the past week, she'd been sitting alone, smiling shyly when I looked at her. I was pleased to receive smiles from the opposite intim, but making time for relationships was not part of my plans until others decided for me. Hi, I'm Sharon Appleby, she introduced herself, sitting down next to me at the table. Hi, I'm Keith Carlisle. How are you? Oh, I know who you are. You've already completed your bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering and are now pursuing a master's degree, which is a remarkable achievement. You've been at the top of a list since the beginning and are known as one of the smartest guys on campus, if not the smartest. Well, I'm not sure about that. There are many others who can challenge your conclusions, but I really work hard. How did you know so much about me? I asked. I was working up the courage to approach you and wanted to know something about you so I could start a conversation. Well, Sharon, you know a lot about me, so what's your story? I'm also a student here, just like you, but I study at the Ivan Allen College of Liberal Arts at Georgia Tech. I hope to earn a bachelor's degree in philosophy with a minor in art. I love to think, and I've been thinking about you a lot lately, she laughed. What is it about me that would interest an attractive woman like you? I cleverly played along. I've had dates and relationships before and during university. There was even one guy who I thought could be the one, but unfortunately, we went our separate ways. It made me rethink my life and where I was headed. I have goals and desires like everyone else, but thanks to my philosophy courses, I've learned to be practical. I want to hitch my car to a star, Keith. I've talked to a few people who know you, and they all say you're an honest and reliable guy who takes your responsibilities seriously. I can't speak for you, but I know that I like you, so I decided to introduce myself and tell you that I'm interested in you. Wow, did you just plan the rest of our lives? I asked in surprise. She smiled. You really are as smart as they say. And so began my stormy relationship with Sharon Appleby. We seemed like the perfect couple. She refused me nothing, and nothing was forbidden. I never intended to let this girl go. As soon as we became a couple, she drove away all other men, saving herself only for me. I never doubted our relationship for a moment. One Friday night, I decided to surprise her with flowers so she could put them in her dorm before we went to see a movie we both wanted to see. After I knocked on her door, I was shocked to see that the door was opened by a man. Can I help you with something? He asked in a defensive tone. Maybe I got the wrong room number. Is Sharon Appleby here? Sensing the name, Sharon rushed to the door dressed to go out. Keith, what are you doing here? She asked nervously. I thought we would meet at your place as usual. With an indignant look, I asked, who is this guy? She opened the door wider so I could enter. I thought that you should meet sooner or later, so it's better to let it be sooner. Keith Carlisle, this is Wesley Stanton, my roommate. Wesley, this is my boyfriend. I told you about him. Your roommate? I asked. Yes, Keith. This is a mixed-type dormitory. Wesley and I are both philosophy majors, and we have very similar opinions, so it seemed natural to live together. I know what you're thinking, and no, it's not what you thought. You're my guy, and I hope it stays that way. Reading my face and sensing my displeasure, Wesley came to her aid. What Sharon tries not to talk about is her attempt to protect my privacy, and I love her for it. She's a good soul, but you already know that I prefer men. Sharon respects and actively advocates for my uniqueness. That's why she probably didn't mention me earlier. Since I revealed myself to you, this relieves her of responsibility. I think if she treats you the way she says, you must be a good guy too. That's it, Keith, my dirty little secret. He was wearing sports shorts and a t-shirt. Of course, he was in his own room, so he had no reason to get dressed. I looked around the room and saw several posters of old philosophers, some in tunics. Wesley noticed me looking at them and intervened. Sharon and I discussed a lot about the structure of influential philosophers of all time. We immediately agreed on 5 of them, but argued about the other 5 until we finally came to an agreement and came up with a list of the top 10. The posters you see here depict Aristotle, Plato, Friedrich Nietzsche, René Descartes, Confucius, Socrates, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, John Locke, Jean-Paul Sartre, and David Hume. Sharon and I spend a lot of time discussing what we both like about philosophy and applying those principles to our daily lives. She's as deep into it as I am, but we both also have an interest in art. After the shock began to wear off, Sharon finally spoke. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about this sooner, Keith, but it wasn't my secret to reveal. I couldn't do that to a good friend. Are these flowers for me? They are wonderful. Thank you. Wesley, could you put them in the water for me, please? Keith and I have a date, and I don't want to waste another minute. She did her best to calm me down while we were walking. She took my hand and asked, Are you okay, Keith? Doesn't it bother you that my roommate is a man? Wesley listens to me talk about you all the time and knows how crazy I am about you. I love you, Keith, and I don't want anything to come between us, especially my roommate. Just say so, and I'll ask for another roommate or move into another room with a girl. Although I would be sad to lose someone who, before you came into my life, was my best friend and always supported me. I thought about what they both revealed to me, and it seemed to coincide with reality. She suggested changing my roommate to make it more comfortable for me. This spoke volumes in her favor. The fact that she defended Wesley's peculiarity also impressed me as correct. Having thought it all over, I saw no reason to doubt or worry about our relationship. She made it clear that she was with me. I decided to pull myself together and try to be as good a person as she thought I was. This is not necessary, dear. I have no problem with Wesley being your roommate. It just came as a shock to me, that's all. I wouldn't want you to hold a grudge against me for separating you from a good, platonic, philosophical friend. I have friends with whom I regularly discuss rocket science, and I don't think twice about the fact that they are women. We're just like-minded science nerds. I understand, but thanks for the offer. This means a lot to me. After that introduction, Sharon rarely mentioned Wesley unless I asked. Sometimes I saw them together on campus going to the same lecture, but I never thought much of it. I also noticed Wesley walking with other guys, which seemed to confirm everything I had been told about both of them. Sharon was always practical and matter-of-fact in every decision she made. I believe that her philosophical enlightenment is deeply woven into the fabric of her personality. She was rarely emotional and always logical. It was annoying at times, but I eventually got used to that part of her character. The next 2 years flew by, and as graduation approached, I proposed to Sharon, and she happily accepted. Her only demand was that I ask Wesley to be one of my witnesses. I agreed, provided that she made sure he did not flirt with my other witnesses. She laughed and promised to talk to him about it so he would be on his best behavior. We decided to wait until the summer after graduation. I became quite accustomed to Wesley's ubiquitous presence due to his cohabitation and friendship with Sharon, but he and I never became close, having no common interests other than Sharon. Despite Sharon's distractions, I was still a top student when I received my master's degree in aerospace engineering. Sharon and Wesley also received their bachelor's degrees in philosophy with a minor in art. Sharon admitted that Wesley barely passed his graduation exams. She confessed that if it hadn't been for her considerable assistance in preparing him for the exams, he would have had to repeat another year. I believed his philosophy of life led him to ignore academic standards or that he was simply lazy. I thought he was lazy but never expressed my disapproval of him to Sharon. He remained her best friend outside of our marriage. I had no expectations that he would find a good job with a philosophy degree, especially with his terrible grades, but his future was ultimately secured. Sharon admitted to me after our wedding that Wesley always knew this and also knew that one day he would inherit all of his parents' wealth. This may have explained his lack of motivation to achieve. I met Nate Perkins and Doug Bradley at shows. They both worked for Aerojet Rocketdyne, an L3 Harris Technologies company that makes the engines for NASA's new rocket. They were working on a rocket engine called BRS-25. 4 of these engines are installed at the base of the rocket and will be the first to fire when the rocket lifts off on the Artemis I mission to the moon. They were impressed by my infectious enthusiasm for aerospace engineering as well as my knowledge. After 3 interviews, and thanks to their recommendations, I was hired to work at the Aerojet Rocketdyne headquarters in the small town of Rancho Cordova in Sacramento County, California. My starting salary was $175,000 per year, with special bonuses based on project results. I joined a team already working on developing engines for use in the upcoming mission to Mars. I had never been more excited about a job prospect. It was my dream. After our wedding and honeymoon, a realtor helped us find the perfect 5-bedroom home. I know 5 bedrooms might seem like a lot, but we engineers think ahead. I envision having 2 or 3 children, which would leave 1 room free for guests or as a home office. There was also room for 1 parent to stay while visiting from another part of the country. We were both reluctant to leave our parents, but Sharon's practical, philosophical mind led her to support me 100% in my career choice. I really admired her and appreciated her support. She never once complained about our situation and enthusiastically embraced our new and exciting future in California with me. Sharon's degree in philosophy left her with limited job opportunities in our small town, but with my fairly large salary, she did a good job as a housewife. She kept the house in perfect order, cooked all my favorite meals, and satisfied all my appetites behind closed doors. I was a happy man. Imagine my surprise one evening, about 3 months after our wedding, when I returned home and found Wesley with us. "Hello, dear," she greeted me with a kiss. "Dinner is almost ready." Wesley came over for a visit, and we reminisced a little about old times. "Why don't you go and shower like usual, and then we can talk over dinner?" "Hi, Wesley." I reluctantly extended my hand for a handshake. "I'll be back soon." While I was taking a shower, I wondered what this scoundrel was doing in our house. Hell, if he asks to stay the night, it might interfere with my nightly fun. I quickly dressed in casual clothes and returned to the kitchen. The table was set for 3, and Sharon was delighted. After she filled my plate with all my favorite foods, she began, "Honey, isn't it great to see Wesley again? He just called out of the blue and decided to visit." It was a breath of fresh air to discuss the nuances of philosophy again with someone who's in the know. "I'm not saying you're a bad communicator, honey, but philosophy was never your thing, just like rocket science wasn't mine." "Well, I think it's good that you were able to chat a little. What brings you to our area, Wesley?" "I don't know if you know, but my philosophy degree turned out to be pretty useless for making a mark in this world. Sharon told me she hasn't found any suitable work in her field here either. It's true, Rancho Cordova isn't that big of a city, so there aren't many options in her area. But she agreed to try being a housewife, and so far she's loving it. I know for sure that she is happy now." "It's true, Keith," Sharon said. She was telling me how happy she was at the moment. "I could teach philosophy at university if I went back to study for my master's and doctorate, but to be honest, I just have no desire to go back to school, especially without my best friend. I'm sure you would be interested in teaching if you decided to complete your education. I have never seen anyone as passionate about philosophy as the 2 of you, but having completed my master's, I can attest to how much work and time it takes to make this happen." "You're right, Keith. If you remember, we both studied art as a minor. I always considered myself a pretty good artist, while Sharon was more inclined to study art. I was recently exploring opportunities to use my talent in drawing, and as fate would have it, I found a job right here in Rancho Cordova at Artistic Expression Studio on Holt Avenue. They specialize in illustrations for children's books and have earned a good reputation among children's book publishers, who actively recommend them to authors. When I flew here for my interview, it consisted of 3 sketches that I drew, representing the author's vision in one of the books they were judging. They liked my innovative sketches and offered me a job on the spot. So here I am. Isn't this wonderful, dear? What are the odds that Wesley's best job was right here in Rancho Cordova? As a philosopher, I certainly don't believe in fate, but this is an incredibly lucky coincidence. Yes, what a coincidence, I retorted sarcastically, ignoring my irritation. She added, don't you see now that Wesley will be living in the same city? We will be able to see each other from time to time so that I can share my philosophical thoughts with someone who understands where I am coming from. Wesley supported her. It's mutual, Sharon. I've been missing my sparring partner since graduating from university, and no one who hasn't been as immersed in doctrine and principles as you and I can carry on a conversation on an intellectual level. On the one hand, I would welcome the opportunity to visit you from time to time, if Keith doesn't mind. I will never do anything that could cause problems. Plus, given the number of male-dominated businesses in this city, I think my chances of finding a partner with similar aspirations are quite high. My college connections have already gone their separate ways. Both of them looked at me. I knew I was being manipulated, but Sharon seemed determined to reconnect with her friend for philosophical conversations, which would only make my head more confused in trying to follow them. I wanted to make her happy. We'll be glad to see you from time to time, Wesley. Just let us know in advance so Sharon can prepare for your arrival. Thank you, dear. But there's one more thing that Wesley needs. He flew here for an interview not knowing how everything would work out, so his return ticket is open. Now that he has a job, he needs a place to live. It may take a couple of days or even a week until he finds a suitable place that fits his budget. Do you mind if he stays with us while he looks for an apartment? After finding one, as soon as he signs the lease for his new apartment, he'll fly back east to get everything ready for his move here. I wasn't thrilled about the idea of Wesley staying in our area, but I couldn't think of a compelling reason to object. After all, they had been roommates for almost 4 years. Hell, he slept in the same room as her a lot more than I did. Of course you can stay here while you look for an apartment, Wesley. Sharon, why don't you start with the realtor we work with to find this place? She seemed very knowledgeable about the area and was great at accommodating our needs. Great idea, Wesley. You'll love meeting Glenda Cook. She is a smart woman and is excellent at finding options to suit her clients' needs. Wesley spent 5 nights in our guest room before flying out on the 6th day. As I suspected, Sharon was nervous while we had a guest, so I had to make do without him. That was okay. 2 weeks later, I was informed that he had successfully moved and settled into his new apartment about 3 miles away. Sharon respectfully asked me every time before inviting him to dinner, which on average happened about 3 times a month. When Sharon announced she was pregnant, I couldn't have been happier. The ultrasound showed that we were having a girl. I attended my first few OB appointments with her, feeling nervous. When the time of delivery approached, the only issue between us was the name. She insisted on naming our daughter Cheryl Diane Carlisle, explaining that she had always loved the name and wanted to give it to our first daughter. I wanted to name her after her mother and mine, but she was completely against it. Since she was doing the bulk of the labor, I was happy to give in to her. It wasn't that important to me what her name would be because I was going to spoil her endlessly. The first time I saw and held my daughter, my heart expanded, ready to love her 1,000 times more. Wesley came to the hospital to celebrate this joyful event. He asked permission to stay in Sharon's room for a while and asked me to take a photo with his phone, which I agreed to. He noted Cheryl's many similarities to her mother. I was both happy and relieved that this was the case. I told them that if she was like me, she might have a hard time finding a boyfriend. Sharon's mother stayed with her for the first week after leaving the hospital, and my mother spent the next week with her. If they had stayed longer, I wouldn't have had the chance to spoil Cheryl, they would have done it themselves. This child was loved beyond measure. Our first Christmas with a baby was a celebratory occasion. Since we still had 2 spare bedrooms after Cheryl arrived, both of our parents flew over and spent Christmas with us. As expected, they showered the unsuspecting 4-month-old with gifts of all sizes and types. Of course, I couldn't be outdone, so I went crazy and spent over $600 on gifts that Cheryl won't even remember. I did not care. We had so much fun celebrating the holiday with her. After they all flew home, Wesley asked permission to visit us the day after they left. Sharon had recovered well from Cheryl's birth, so we said it was fine. He came in, laughed with Sharon and a few philosophical jokes that I couldn't understand, and then turned his attention to Cheryl. He gave her a t-shirt with a slogan on it, which Sharon quickly put on her. The t-shirt read, "It doesn't matter how slow you go, as long as you don't stop." Confucius. He played with Cheryl for about 30 minutes. Sharon took a few pictures and sent them to his phone. Wesley thanked me very much for allowing this short visit and left another late Christmas present for Cheryl, saying that he had always kept it but did not want to interfere with our family gathering during the holidays. I felt differently about Wesley after that and respected him more. He quietly left Cheryl an unopened gift. Sometime after he left, I asked, "What do you think this could be?" "I have no idea, Keith." When Wesley and I talked earlier, he mentioned that he had sent the photo you took of him holding Cheryl in the hospital when she was born to his parents. I've met them a few times when they visited him at college, so they know me as his best friend. He said they loved the photo and wanted to give Cheryl a Christmas present. He also mentioned that his parents were unhappy with his lifestyle because, even if he eventually married a man and they adopted a child, the chances of having grandchildren as a result of a normal relationship where their blood would be passed on were zero. So, they came to love our little Cheryl as a kind of replacement grandchild. Interesting. So the t-shirt is from him, and the wrapped gift is from his parents. I understand. Since you are his friend and you know his parents, you should open it, I said curiously. Sharon smiled and carefully unwrapped the gift. As she opened it, she began to take out sets of coins tied together from the United States Mint. This was a collection of all the coins produced by the Mint for the calendar year of Cheryl's birth. In addition to the regular and commemorative coins, there were all silver and gold sets marked by each of the 3 U.S. mints. There were even platinum and palladium coins. I was amazed. I started looking up the value of this collection scattered on the floor in front of Cheryl, who was more interested in the cardboard box. The collection was easily worth over $20,000. What the hell? I reported my findings to Sharon. "What do you want to do with it?" she asked uncertainly. "How can we accept a gift for our 4-month-old daughter that's worth more than $20,000? Wouldn't that be wrong?" "It depends on how you look at it," she suggested. "What do you mean?" "I've never even met these people, and they give Cheryl a gift of this magnitude. What will they expect in return if we accept it? And where do these people even live?" "You don't understand, Keith. They are rich, incredibly rich. Filthy rich. For us ordinary people, such a gift seems extravagant and pretentious. For Wesley's billionaire parents, it's like giving her a nice stroller or car seat. They don't think about their gestures at all. If we try to give something back, it would offend them terribly and could also damage our friendship with Wesley. I don't want to risk that." The Stantons' main residence is in Dallas, Texas, but in addition to many other properties, they also have a huge mansion in Sacramento. Wesley gave Cheryl a cute philosophy t-shirt, probably because it was all he could afford. He probably knew what his parents were giving her and didn't want it revealed in front of him to avoid embarrassing him. But he didn't want Cheryl to be deprived of something really good. Couldn't we just write them a nice thank you note and leave it for her to use when she's older? After a few seconds of reflection, I realized that her words sounded reasonable given the circumstances. I had never thought about the unimaginable wealth they must have. If I were a billionaire, I could perform such a gesture of kindness simply because I am a good person. If I could be that kind, why shouldn't I be? Besides, they didn't give anything to Sharon or me. This was exclusively for Cheryl. Since it was Christmas, I decided I could live with it and told her so. But she mentioned something else that intrigued me. "Why did you say that the t-shirt Wesley gave her was probably all he could afford? Don't artists make a lot of money?" She laughed at my naivety. "Yes, famous artists who have gained great popularity really receive large sums for each of their works, just like good portrait and landscape painters. But Wesley, he works as part of a team of children's book illustrators and is not a solo artist. He once mentioned to me that his salary was about $45,000 a year. Here in California, his rent and other expenses easily eat up more than 3/4 of that amount. He doesn't quite live paycheck to paycheck, but almost. Please don't tell him I mentioned his modest income. It would put him in an awkward position, and I wouldn't want that. As his friend, I didn't know Wesley was a poor artist. There were many less expensive places than California where he could have settled, but apparently, he wanted to be near his parents, who had a mansion nearby in Sacramento. I felt that my relationship with Sharon was strong and continuing to strengthen. She was the perfect wife and mother and adored Cheryl as a loving mother should. We settled into a routine for intimate. To rephrase that, we had a night on a schedule, but it was never a routine. When Cheryl entered the toddler stage and began to walk, or rather, shuffle, it became obvious to everyone around her that she was a daddy's girl. Every time I returned home from work, she would scream and shuffle towards me with open arms and cover my face with wet kisses. God, how I love this girl. Sharon seemed puzzled by how attached Cheryl was to me. After all, they spent the whole day together, and I was only home in the evenings and on weekends. Perhaps it really is absence that breeds tenderness. Sharon almost accused me once of trying to poison Cheryl against her, but she couldn't give a single supporting example. Although I couldn't explain Cheryl's affection for me, I admit that I secretly loved it. Wesley's parents, maintaining their affection for Cheryl, continued to give her special, expensive gifts on her birthdays and Christmas. Wesley continued to send them updated photos after each visit. I reminded myself that Cheryl had always been a long-term beneficiary, and I didn't want to deprive her of that. Sharon asked me if I would mind if Wesley's parents became Cheryl's godparents, given their generous affection, which they generously supported financially. I finally gave in. After persisting enough, Sharon asked, "I have a question out of curiosity about Wesley." "Of course, dear. What do you want to know?" "Well, you talk a lot either when he's visiting here or regularly on the phone. How are things going in his personal life?" "Oh, we really discuss a lot, and this topic also comes up sometimes. He told me that while he admits to having an active personal life, he has never met another man who has ever met the standards he has accepted as the minimum requirements for the man he will one day marry. Please tell me what kind of man he is looking for that meets his minimum requirements." I was shocked to hear her answer. "He's looking for a man just like you, Keith. He views you as a model and respects the hell out of the way you treat me and take care of your family. Although he has gone through many promising candidates, he stated that none of them compares to you. Please don't tell him I told you this, but he has told me many times that if you weren't already married to me, he would immediately pursue you with everything. He even once told me that the reason he loves our wonderful children dearly is because they came from you." She smiled widely as if I had just received a compliment. To tell the truth, such thoughts disgusted me. I like women. "I hope you let him know that," I said. "Of course," she grinned. "But it tickles me that he's so in love with you. I told him I would never share you, so he'll just have to look elsewhere." She chuckled again. That's when I decided to pay more attention to how Wesley acted around me. I didn't want to give him any idea that I might be interested in any kind of mutual arrangement. Just before Cheryl's second birthday, Sharon gave birth to our twins, a boy and a girl. Although they were not identical twins, they shared some similarities. I wanted to name the boy after myself, but she rejected the idea from the start. She reminded me that Wesley was Wesley standing for and told me how much he hated it. He doesn't hate his parents, he just wishes he had a name independent of his father. But he had no choice in the matter, so he would lose his inheritance. So he's trapped. I don't want that for our boy. I feel sorry for Wesley if this is true, but I always wanted my son, if I ever had one, to bear my name. But he'll be Carlisle. Isn't that enough? I like my name, and I believe that our son will like it too. I'm not going to give him like I did with Cheryl. I really insist that my boy bear my name. You have to let me do this, Sharon." She seemed to be weighing several options before offering what she considered a compromise. "I'll offer you a deal. If you allow me to choose a name for the girl, then I will agree to have Keith in his name if I can choose another name. Comrade. I've always liked this name. How about Conrad Keith Carlisle and Jocelyn Edgewa Carlisle? Do we have an agreement?" I didn't want to start a world war over this, and I admit that I also liked the name Jocelyn for our new daughter, so I agreed. We both signed the birth certificates, and it was settled. Little did I know it was a hollow victory. She always called him Conrad, although I called him Keith. However, she spent all day with him, and I had much less time in his life. He never responded to the name Keith, but always turned around when his name was Conrad. Well, Cheryl kept running to me every time I came home. Now she called me Dada, which melted my heart. Luckily, her kisses became more discreet, and she no longer painted my face like a paintbrush when she kissed me. But she kissed me anyway. God, how I love this girl. Conrad and Jocelyn had their hands full and kept Sharon busier than usual in the early years of their lives. I didn't think about the stand-ins for long, since Wesley had not yet found a worthy marriage partner, let alone the possibility of adopting a child. They asked to become godparents for the newborn twins. Who am I to deny my children such expensive gifts for birthdays and Christmas? Sharon continued to be attentive in bed. Our nightlife never became dull. She remained very disciplined on her Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, but who am I to complain? When all 3 children went to school, she stepped up her efforts even more in the bedroom. She told me she has more energy now after taking a break from parenting. At school, I was a happy man when the twins were 6 years old and Cheryl was 8. We had a special project at work that required a lot of my time since I was chosen to be the project manager. We were working on developing a synthesis of a solid fuel chemical engine with an electric one for propulsion. Such an engine would have enough energy to reach orbit, but would also be able to travel long distances afterward without jettisoning its boosters. We had little time to prove the effectiveness of our development, and unfortunately, this took up most of my weekends. I really hated being away from home, but Sharon said she knew there would be times like this in my line of work, and she loved my dedication to supporting our family. Surprisingly, the stand-ins got down to business. We learned that they owned a 120-foot yacht with a captain and crew that they maintained in San Pablo Bay near Vallejo, California. The 70-mile trip takes only about an hour and 15 minutes during the summer. When I worked weekends, Sharon and the children, with my blessing, accepted their invitation to spend every weekend on their yacht. This gave the stand-ins a chance to spend time with their godchildren, and the kids had a great time. Of course, I didn't like that I couldn't be with them on the weekends, but their absence allowed me to work late into the night and fall into bed as soon as I got home. During the week, I tried to be home by 9 p.m. I saw the children briefly before they were sent to bed. Cheryl, bless her heart, always refused to go to bed without seeing and kissing Daddy first. God, I love this girl. Later, I asked Sharon why the children called the stand-ins Grandma and Grandpa when they talked about them and the unforgettable trips they took on their giant boat. Sharon explained that it was an honorary title the children decided to give themselves because of the frequent interactions on trips and the wonderful gifts they received on their birthdays and Christmas. Besides, they were their godparents, and she didn't have the heart to hurt the Stanton's feelings by correcting the children in front of them. One thing I will say about Sharon and my long hours is that, no matter what time I finally came home, she always took care of my needs. In fact, I came to appreciate the Stantons more and more for their role in the lives of their godchildren. For example, every year for 2 weeks, I had to lead our representation at various week-long exhibitions. While I could have taken Sharon and the kids with me, they would have been bored to tears waiting for me to be available late at night. Whenever possible, the Stantons would take it upon themselves to fly them all to an exotic location for a week, where they would have a wonderful time. Sacramento's airport was only 4 miles from our city, and there was a private jet often stationed there. Grandma and Grandpa Stanton were very popular names in our family. In subsequent years, more such opportunities arose when I was assigned to a 2-year design program at one of our locations in Europe. Grandma and Grandpa took us all on a 2-week Disney cruise. When they returned, they told exciting stories about the excursions they had taken and the magnificent performances they had seen. I, for one, appreciated their active participation. One strange thing worth mentioning is that although I briefly met Stanton when they took my family out for a ride in their limousine, they politely declined all invitations to dinner and family outings at our house. I don't know if they felt that staying in our humble home was beneath their dignity compared to their mansion staffed by hired workers, but whether it was true or not, I never heard a single disparaging word in either direction. When the children were in junior and senior high school, Conrad and Jocelyn appreciated their mom's help with homework and projects, but Cheryl, bless her little heart, insisted on waiting for Dad to help her no matter what time I got home from work. I never presented a minute spent helping her besides the fantastic intim with my wife. The highlight of my day was spending time with Cheryl. Sharon became very upset with her, saying that she was causing Dad unnecessary stress by insisting that I help her. She demanded that I talk some sense into Cheryl and make her work on these things with her mother. Although I said I would talk to her, I quietly told Cheryl that I enjoyed working with her and not worrying about burdening myself. After all, that's what dads are for. I told her it was my privilege. The children grew like weeds. I was as happy with my family as any man had a right to be. I was proud of all 3 children, but I was always especially close to Cheryl, much to Sharon's chagrin. She stated that she had invested much more time in her than I had, but her connection with Cheryl was much weaker compared to her obvious attachment to her father. My vanity led me to attribute this to my genetics, but Sharon also insisted on the same thing. For some reason, Cheryl was smart as a whip and skipped a grade due to her precocious intelligence. During her senior year of high school, when she was just 17, Cheryl asked me to help her pick out a prom dress, which made me very excited. I bought my daughter an elegant yet daring dress that amazed every man who saw her in it. As part of my role, I read the riot act or date, but she prepared for my speech. I was annoyed that Wesley wanted to take a picture with her before she left for prom, but I kept quiet for Sharon's sake. He was still friends with her after all these years. I don't know if his whole story was new to her or if she had pieced it together in his unmarried state. She reminded me that he still admires me greatly and that all of his potential suitors still pale in comparison. The thought still disgusted me. 2 days after graduation, Cheryl came to see me. Dad, I don't know if Mom told you, but the Stantons have offered to pay all my expenses if I agree to go to Georgia Tech and get a bachelor's degree in philosophy, just like Mom and Wesley did all those years ago. No, honey, she didn't tell me. I had no idea. Well, my mother persistently pressured me to agree, saying that it would help our family financially if I accepted such a gift from them in the form of education. But to be completely honest, I'm just not as interested in philosophy as my mother. She quickly loses patience with me every time I reject the idea. I do not know what to do. I don't want to be a burden to the family financially, but I don't want to end up with a useless degree. My mom tells me that it doesn't matter what degree I get because, just like her, I won't use it when I get married. What do you think I should do, Daddy? I was shocked by this discovery. I knew Sharon was into philosophy, but I had no idea she would try to force her ideals on any of our children. I made a mental note to talk to Sharon about this topic in the future. Honey, I have no idea what your mother is talking about. Either way, she is completely wrong about our financial situation. The Stantons are not responsible for paying for your college education. This privilege belongs to me. For years, I have put money into investment accounts so that all 3 of you could go to the college of your choice and achieve your heart's desire. Of course, you're only 17 now, but I couldn't be prouder because you're about to graduate from school. The accounts are full, honey. You just need to let me know what major you want to pursue and where you are accepted, and I'll immediately transfer the money for all 4 years in one fell swoop. She tearfully hugged me and kissed me on the cheek. Thanks, Dad. I just knew you would never let me down. I didn't tell Mom or anyone else about it because I didn't want to argue with her. I want to get a degree from Georgia Tech just like you. I love you, Dad, and I want to do what you do, not what someone else wants me to do. I have an acceptance letter from Georgia Tech. Let me do it. She was fiddling with her phone. Okay, Dad, I just sent you the link and password to my Georgia Tech online account. Once my bill is paid in full, I will let everyone know about my decision. My phone rang, acknowledging receipt of the notification. Darling, give me 15 minutes to make the necessary arrangements. I'll pay for all 4 years of your education now. I couldn't be prouder of you if you became President of the United States. God, I love this girl so much. She's now fully secured for the next 4 years. I hope she achieves her dreams just like I did. Did you actually prepay Cheryl's expenses for her 4 years of engineering at Georgia Tech? My disappointed wife asked. Did you really try to force her to get a degree in philosophy when she had no interest in it? Her grandparents generously offered to pay all of her expenses for her philosophy degree. Her refusal would have offended them and damaged their relationship. I was simply trying to do what was right for all parties. Correction, her grandparents didn't offer to pay a penny for her education. Now, her godparents could offer, but not her grandparents. Okay, Mr. Drell, engineer, they all call them their grandparents. I was simply acknowledging their status in the eyes of our children. But why did you talk her out of a philosophy degree without consulting me first? It was extremely rude of you to do that behind my back. You mean how you went behind my back trying to force her to study philosophy without telling me a word about it? Is this the kind of rudeness you're talking about? Honey, there's no need to get so annoyed. Keith, I'll talk to Wesley about this. I am trying to reimburse you for the amount you contributed to Cheryl's college expenses. His parents wanted to pay for her education and hoped that their generous offer would encourage her to follow the same path as Wesley and me. Again, this is something you should have talked to me about first. I understand that for you, the Stantons are moral gods who must rule the universe with their all-consuming power. While I appreciate the kind gestures the Stantons have made for you and the children over the years, it is not their place to provide for my daughter's education. This responsibility lies on my shoulders as the breadwinner of our family. I paid for her education because that's what fathers do for their children. When Conrad and Jocelyn are ready for college, I will do the same for them. This is what Cheryl wants, and I'm going to make sure she has what she desires. Sharon shook her head as if I were as clueless as a polar bear. I did not have her pedigree, philosophical immersion, or understanding. For her, it was just a practical matter without involving emotions. The Stantons have more money than us, so we should let them pay for whatever they want to pay for. I'm just not wired that way. She left in frustration, recognizing my limited ability to understand. Of course, she always believed she was coming from a higher position of understanding. In this case, I'm glad she thinks I'm a Neanderthal. The following week, we were all present at Cheryl's graduation. Many photographs were taken by the Stantons, Wesley, and our entire family. Sharon's parents and my parents flew out for the event, and we were all thrilled for her, especially since she graduated with honors a year ahead of her classmates. After I had already paid for her upcoming tuition fees for her engineering degree, her mother and I also gave Cheryl the best, most reliable laptop anyone could buy, as well as a couple of expensive specialized scientific calculators that I knew she would need for her engineering classes. Cheryl hugged my neck tightly and kissed my cheek, whispering in my ear, "Thank you. I love you forever, Dad. Forever, you are the best dad in the whole world. Don't forget that." God, how I love this girl. Wesley gave Cheryl a new copy of his favorite book about the most important philosophers of all time. Sharon cried as she leafed through it. Cheryl thanked him politely and put the book aside. Our parents gave her clothes and jewelry that she adored. As usual, the Stantons made a show of presenting her with a brand new Audi R8 GT with a full package of options. A quick internet search showed that it cost them over $250,000. How could she not be happy? She almost jumped for joy, but I was happy for my daughter. She didn't leave my side all day except when she drove the Audi. She begged me to go with her, but I politely refused and said that she should take the twins with her. They happily agreed, much to the disappointment of Sharon and the Stantons. I showed no interest in the car or made any comments about it. It was still Cheryl's day. A few weeks later, on Thursday, June 27th, something unusual happened. When I returned home from work, expecting Cheryl to make my day with her energetic greeting, I noticed the house was unusually quiet. Why is it so quiet in the house? Where are the children? Wesley took them away about an hour ago. He was taking them to the marina for the night on the Stantons' yacht. They seemed very happy as they had not been on the water on this luxury yacht for a long time. Okay, but don't you usually go with them when they meet like this? Usually, yes, but not today. I want this evening to be the most special night of your life, even better than our honeymoon, and I thought it would be great to have some time to ourselves without the kids underfoot. I smiled widely at her. Offer? What do I owe this special favor of my entire life? I asked, knitting my eyebrows. Recently, I was thinking about our life together. I realized that you have been an exemplary provider for me and the children. I am very lucky to have chosen you, my dear, and I thought it would be only fitting to show you how much I appreciate you. For pleasing you and knowing that you are hungry for reward, I prepared this wonderful meal consisting of all your favorite dishes. She didn't have to tell me twice. I had no idea what accelerated my luck, but I wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. My olfactory senses were overloaded with the delicious delicacies she had prepared. I had never eaten more delicious food in my life. I took a quick shower while she cleaned up the kitchen in preparation for the main event, and what an event it was. When the alarm went off the next morning, I jumped out of bed, realizing that I had already hit the snooze button several times. Sharon was already up, so I pulled on my clothes and hurried to the kitchen for a goodbye kiss, hoping I wouldn't be late for work. All I found was a note on the table that she had left for me, saying that she had gone to check on the kids and that I would see her tonight. I barely made it on time to the meeting I had scheduled for noon. While I was at work, I received a short message from Sharon. I have a special request. Please come home on time after work tonight. It is important. I responded, asking if I could expect a repeat of last night, but she didn't respond. I had a lot of work to keep me busy, but I was fervently thinking about what treats might be in store. We never had an intimate on Fridays, ever. Maybe she decided to change her ingrained habits this time. I found it odd to see a stretch limousine parked out front when I arrived home at the appointed time. As she requested, I had no idea the Stantons would be here. I quickly remembered whose birthday it was, but it wasn't theirs. They usually came to give the kids special, expensive gifts for birthdays and Christmas, so this was something different. When I entered the house, I was greeted by an uneasy silence. Usually, one of the children was always running around. Seeing no one, I was about to call out when Sharon spoke from the kitchen. "Keith, please sit down. Wesley and I need to discuss a very serious matter with you." I noticed a limousine at the entrance. "Sharon, what's happening?" "Keith, we have a very serious matter to discuss," she said, her voice steady. "You and Wesley, right? You always knew that I'm very pragmatic, so I'll just tell it like it is. I'm going to divorce you, Keith, as soon as possible. Wesley and I will get married the same day our divorce is approved by the court. I need to make it clear to you that this breakup will be final, not only for me but also for the children. There's absolutely no chance that we will ever reconcile as husband and wife after our separation. There's no hope, Keith. No hope. What? I thought you loved me. Is this some kind of sick joke? Today is not April 1st. I was shocked. Over the years, I had grown used to Sharon like an old sweater that keeps you warm when it's cold, but Wesley is, and will be my only everlasting love. He and I are inseparable souls who were always meant to be together. I will not bore you with quotations from the philosophers to whom Wesley and I are devoted. I seriously doubt that you will ever be able to understand how inextricably linked he and I are. But you said he loves men. When did it start?" Sharon's eyes flashed. "He pretended so you could calmly accept his presence in my life and the lives of the children. We never ended our relationship when he was my college roommate. We were intimate every night, and our physical, emotional, and intellectual relationship has never stopped since the day we first met. Wesley and I made love every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon while you were at work. On Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I stayed with you as a reward for your support. On Sundays, I rested out of respect for both of you. I have never given either of you recycled attention since I have never been with both of you on the same day. But during all those vacations and holidays with Wesley and his parents, he and I stayed in the same room while they looked after the kids. His parents knew what was going on from the very beginning. Being apart was unbearable for both of us, which we are fixing today. I don't understand. If Mr. Wonderful here is your soulmate, why did you even marry me and have children with me? It doesn't make sense." "I can answer that, Keith." "Shut up. I don't want to hear a word from your mouth." I screamed. "This is between me and Sharon." At my outburst, 2 strong men ran into the kitchen, ready to restrain me to protect Wesley. He waved his hand at them. As expected, Keith is emotionally shaken. "Perhaps it would be better if you did all the talking," Wesley suggested to my wife. "Of course," Sharon replied. "Wesley and I are truly husband and wife. We are forever united in the universe in a special spiritual ceremony. In the first year of our union, the only problem we needed to solve was our financial issues. As you know, our philosophy degrees don't always lead to high-paying jobs. Wesley instinctively knew that we would need significant financial resources to start and raise our family. His wealthy parents, unfortunately, decided not to provide him with their extensive financial resources until he inherited their fortune upon their death. He had no choice but to accept their decision, knowing that temporary measures would be required for now. Ever since he proposed this plan to you, we've been playing the long game. He allowed me to share myself with you as a temporary worker in the garden. Wesley personally selected and approved you to be my temporary husband to provide for me and his children until he became secure through inheritance. Your profession pays well, that's why he chose you. Remember, Keith, I came to you myself, caught you legally, married you, and allowed you to provide for and share my life and the lives of my children. You mean our children, I corrected. Sharon quietly opened a folder in front of her, pulled out 3 sheets of paper, and pushed them towards me. No, Keith. None of the children are yours. Not even your precious Cheryl. Wesley knew you'd want proof. These are certified DNA reports legally confirming that all 3 children are the biological offspring of Wesley Stanton Roman IV and myself. I had to carefully plan and time my fertile periods to ensure none of them were yours. Of course, we needed you to believe that they were yours so you could provide for them in the best possible way. You have done a good job as a temporary husband and father, and for that, we thank you for your services. And just so you know, Jocelyn was named after Wesley's 2 grandmothers, and Conrad was his grandfather's middle name. They are his through and through. She mercilessly tore my heart apart in the most brutal way possible, speaking as calmly as if she were discussing a manicure. Her shamelessness was incomprehensible. I looked at the documents she offered, they confirmed her words. I hung my head in defeat. My life was a lie. I didn't know whether to try to kill them or kill myself. My feelings were a complete mess. I took a deep breath as my engineering mind took over. I had to look at my life dispassionately and calmly, so as not to give them the pleasure of seeing me crumble. I wanted them to think that I had nothing to worry about anymore. My silence spurred her on. Is there something you want to say, Keith? Don't you want to yell at me or call me horrible names? Miss Appleby, I replied calmly, deliberately using her maiden name as a way of disowning her. If you do not have the intellectual capacity to understand who you are without my explanation, then the effort will be in vain. You exalt the philosophy of Baruch Spinoza. She was stunned by my attack but quickly regained her composure. So be it. Morality is just an abstraction. Archaic terms such as traitor, cuckold, and betrayal are all subjective and dependent on the perspective of the observer. And the spoon ran away with the fork, I interjected. I have always loved fairy tales. Thanks for reminding me of this. Enough of your childish nonsense, Miss Appleby. Why now? What event brought your rottenness to light again? She took exception to my dismissive tone, but was determined to maintain her version of politeness. Sadly, Wesley's parents died in a plane crash on Monday. Fortunately, we were told that they died instantly and did not suffer. We were busy preparing the funeral, so we didn't have a chance to tell you until today. Wesley's parents own 57% of the shares of the pharmaceutical company Clennard Pharmaceuticals, which is worth $450 million, with an annual income of $125 million. An extraordinary meeting of the board of directors recognized Wesley as their heir, and he inherited their entire fortune. His new financial situation has taken him to a new level, allowing him to take his rightful place at the head of our family, which he does today. She continued, Wesley has decided to move with our reunited family to the Stanton Mansion in Dallas for a while. The children and I will go there for the funeral service. Of course, you are neither invited nor welcome. I don't want us to be enemies, Keith. You played your role honestly. We don't demand anything from you in the divorce, absolutely nothing. Not even our underwear. Wesley bought new clothes for the kids and me that we are now wearing. Neither of us will take a single thing with us that you have provided. Now that Wesley is fully capable of taking his rightful place as a husband and father in our lives, the house, cars, and everything you bought is still there, along with these quitclaim forms that transfer all ownership exclusively to you. The only personal items we will take with us will be gifts from Wesley and his parents. These are our real treasures. She added, there's only one technical issue left that we would like to resolve before we go. Now that you know the children are not your biological offspring, we have these forms that you must sign to terminate your legal parental rights so that Wesley can legally adopt them and give them their legal names. Legal names? Why does he need to adopt his biological children? Well, we considered leaving your name off their birth certificates, but we realized that it might jeopardize our goal of your continued support of the children. Wesley reluctantly agreed to let you sign their birth certificates, making you their legal father regardless of their genetic connection to him. In fact, you have always been only a stepfather to them. Now that we are opening a new chapter in their lives, it is time to retire your temporary name in favor of their true legacy, Stanton. Wesley wants to compensate you for your expenses for his children so far. The average estimated cost of raising a child under 18 is about $300,000. Cheryl is only 17, and the twins are both 15, which means there are 7 years of expenses that you haven't yet paid. Wesley wants to reimburse you the full $300,000 for each child, totaling $900,000. I agree with him that this is more than fair. Additionally, we discovered that you recently deposited $1,250,000 into Cheryl's college account to cover her 4 years of tuition. Here's a check for the full $1,150,000, a nice, neat sum if you sign these 3 forms terminating your legal parental rights. I took the check, examined it, and tore it into pieces. Thank you, Keith. This is unexpected, Sharon exclaimed. Does this mean you will terminate your legal parental rights without compensation? That means, Mrs. Appleby, that I won't sign any forms. Do the children know what you are asking me to do? Of course they know. A year ago, when Cheryl turned 16, we told her and the twins that Wesley was their biological father and that his parents were their real grandparents. We asked them not to reveal this to you out of respect for how kind of father you had been to them and for maintaining family stability. Naturally, they were shocked at first, but then delighted to realize what their real father's wealth would ultimately bring. I thought to myself, and the hits just keep coming. After Cheryl became a daddy's girl, I believe Sharon deliberately alienated the twins from me. But Cheryl, it hurt far more than anything Sharon could ever say or do to me, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. I do not trust you after all the lies you've already admitted to. I'll never believe a word you say. I want to hear them tell me they want me to lose my parental rights so this man can adopt them. Wesley nodded to Nate, who left the room and returned with 3 unusually quiet children. They were wearing new clothes that I had never seen them wear before, just as Sharon had pointed out. When they saw me, they began to sob, everyone except Cheryl. Tears poured from her eyes onto the ground in silent agony. Keith wants to make sure that each of you wants him to terminate his parental rights so that your real biological father can legally adopt you and proudly tell you his name. Do you all agree that this is what you want? All 3 looked at the floor and nodded slowly in agreement. I thought I'd have to check my pulse to make sure my heart was still beating. There are no words to describe the complete devastation I felt at that moment. I decided it was time to let out the anger that had arisen. Okay, Wesley, do you want to play ball? Then let's play catch. Just a few minutes ago, you offered to buy my share in these 3 children, but your offer did not interest me. Now that we are all here together, I will sign your divorce agreement and terminate my parental rights under 2 conditions. Wesley quipped, "Don't be ridiculous. No one is asking you to sell anyone or anything. I was simply offering to reimburse the expenses you have advanced for their care so far." It's a lie, and everyone here knows it. I have 3 birth certificates stating that I am their legal and biological father. You are asking me to transfer my rights to you and are ready to pay me money for it. This is a direct offer to buy and sell. I have something for sale, and you want to buy it. We agree on a price. That's all. The children looked very dissatisfied by my speech, as if they were being treated as chattel. Since everything revealed today revolved around money and its sudden influx, I wanted them to understand that they were being deliberately bought and sold. It wouldn't change the outcome, but it would ease my conscience by pointing it out. Let's get this over with, Keith. That's Mr. Carlisle for you, Mr. Stanton. Okay, Mr. Pascarlisle. How much money would it take for you to do everything possible for these innocent children? $3 million. $1 million apiece. I'll even add Sharon for free as a bonus. Sharon seemed irritated by my remark, but held her tongue. You have to have a very high opinion of yourself to believe that $3 million is a reasonable number. You think so, right? Okay, no problem. We're done here because these 3 precious children, whom you heroically convinced to disown me as their father, are worth far more to me than a measly $3 million. Just wondering, Mr. Stanton, why aren't they worth $3 million to you? He looked nervously at Sharon, then at the kids, and then back at me. After a thoughtful moment, he said, done, $3.15 million, including reimbursement for Cheryl's college expenses. No, not even $3 million. Not a penny more. You are buying children, not my funds for Cheryl's college expenses. She may deny that I am her father, but every day she is on campus, she will know that I, Keith Carlisle, the man who loved and raised her, provided for her college. Great, he spat. Nate, give this man a check. I'm afraid I'll have to decline the check, since you and Miss Appleby have proven to me that you are both blatant liars. I refuse to sign anything until I receive payment in full. I pulled out my phone and opened my savings account. Here's my bank account open for your information. Once I see that the balance has increased by $3 million, I will follow through and complete our transaction. Frustrated by my intransigence, Wesley nodded an 8. He looked at my phone, copied my account number to his phone, and initiated the transfer. It took 5 minutes. After Wesley entered his password, he said, "Check your account now, Mr. Carlisle. I think you will find that the entire amount has been transferred." I confirmed the transaction and nodded my head. "Now, Mr. Carlisle, it is time to sign all the requested documents." "Not so fast, Mr. Stanton. In case you forgot, I said earlier that I had 2 conditions. So far, only one of them has been completed. You are trying my patience, Mr. Carlisle. Please tell me what the other condition is." "One last romp in the hay with Sharon," he bristled. "Oh, I already took care of that last night, my love. As you asked, I gave Mr. Pascarlisle the night of his life." "A night you will never forget as long as he lives," she reminded. "Isn't that right, Keith?" I furrowed my brow in confusion. "Are we talking about the same night? Last night? I'm confused. If you call your miserable performance last night the night of my life, I feel sorry for poor Mr. Stanton. Why do you think I left you for free? I've already forgotten about last night." I chuckled just as she was about to explode. Wesley grabbed her hand to calm her rage. "Let's get this over with, Mr. Carlisle. What is your second condition?" "I want each of the children, in turn, to look me straight in the eyes and say that they love you more than me and want to leave me from now on and live with you." Sharon jumped to her feet. "It's outrageous. I won't allow this. This is cruel to impose on such innocent children." "Cruel? Do you mean the same cruelty that you 5 inflicted on me today? How cruel could it be for them to openly admit that they now love and accept him as their only father? Isn't that what just happened to you? Do they agree after you put them here? If I do not hear such confessions, then you will not receive my signatures. I want specific assurances from each of them that this is what they want." Stunned by my words, she returned to her chair. Wesley looked at the children. "Conrad," Wesley said. Conrad looked shyly into my eyes and repeated, "Mr. Carlisle, I love Wesley more than you, and from now on I want to be with him." He quickly turned away and wiped his eyes. "Your turn, darling." Jocelyn repeated the same words as her brother, barely holding back her tears. Predictably, the twins have little hesitation in their desire to reject me, but my heart was beating in anticipation of Cheryl's reaction. She strangely maintained an angry, tear-stained mask. "Cheryl, now it's your turn, honey," Wesley said sternly. "Say these words and all this will end, and we can start our new life. Please say the words, Cheryl." Cheryl looked into my eyes sadly. Her anger increased under the pressure of Wesley's demand, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. She wiped her face and said in compromise, "Dad, I choose to be with Conrad, Jocelyn, and Mom." "I'm sorry, Dad." There are 3 of them and you are one. She finished with tears. Cheryl, honey, you knew this for over a year and didn't tell me. Why? I had my reasons, Dad. Her crying intensified. Sharon begged me. I thought you loved her. Can't you see that she is confused? Let her go. Damn it, Cheryl. Just say those damn words to him and get it over with. Wesley exclaimed rudely. Cheryl looked at him with hostility in her eyes. Come on, Wesley. Shout at me, call me names, beat me half to death. I will never say these words, she said decisively. By then, I was crying myself, forced to force an almost impossible situation on her. My heart wasn't just broken, it was completely destroyed, annihilated. She doesn't need to say anymore, I said resignedly. I heard everything. These 2 made you choose between them or me, and you chose them. For reference, I would like to share with you my tears as I signed each document. Nate quickly grabbed them and certified my signature, turning them into official documents. Wesley said, dry phones, and 4 phones were neatly laid out side by side on the table. Mr. Carlyle, he chuckled, this is a legal order requiring you to stay away from me and my family. You may not come within 500 feet of us or communicate with us in any way for the rest of your life. If you violate it, you will end up in jail for contempt of court. We have all new phones and my kids are leaving their old lives behind completely. I demand that you respect this. I took the court order in my hands, tore it into pieces, and replied, it was unnecessary. It will never be needed. I hope to never see you again. I lied in agony. Now, if you don't mind, please leave my house. Wesley was the last to speak. I'm sorry to say, but you're a good guy. That's why I chose you. Good luck. Once again upset, I replied, don't quit your day job to write condolences. My former family members quietly walked out one by one. Overwhelmed by her emotions, Cheryl began to sob loudly as she walked. Looking back at me as she exited the front door, she shouted, I'm sorry. I love you, Dad. I will see you again. She was quickly taken away from the house and placed in a limousine. I lost control and fell to the floor, curled up in a ball, sobbing as the threads of my life unraveled. At that moment, I didn't care whether I lived or died. I was flushed down the toilet like a piece of crap, with all 4 members of my family yanking on the chain. I had been a gullible fool since the day I met Sharon and was caught in their treacherous web of deceit. These 2 were the most evil and narcissistic people I had ever met. It felt like a tsunami had crashed over me, causing me to drown where I couldn't breathe. I felt the pangs of loss, mourning the loss of my entire family as if they had all suddenly died. After what seemed like hours, I looked at my watch, and it was only 30 minutes. I've always stuck to the old adage, you can be part of the problem or part of the solution. I would not advise anyone to experience extreme sadness. I decided that it was better to somehow work through it and become part of the solution rather than be swallowed up in the mire of endless shock and sadness over my circumstances and become part of the problem. I flipped the mental switch that disconnected me from my hopeless emotions and put on my engineering hat to consider how to structure this dramatic event without succumbing to the ongoing pain. I have no wife, children, or obligations. I am a free man facing an uncertain future. Gloria Gaynor's song I Will Survive immediately came to mind. Wesley and Sharon now have unlimited financial resources, and with it, unlimited dominance. One snap of their fingers is enough to fulfill any of their wishes. Even with my recently contributed $3 million, I'm as poor as a church mouse compared to them. What do you think of our first part of the story? In my opinion, the situation is quite interesting as the husband has come up with an unusual revenge plan. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. See you in the comments.